I call the Honourable Member Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Chair. The committee stages of the whole House on the Dairy Industry Restructuring Amendment Bill. The bill is making good progress. It is what the majority of the milk suppliers of Fonterra wish, and it needs to be stated quite clearly. Very interesting situation that the opposition finds itself in, especially when you listen to the two conversations. Sorry, Mr Chair. Listen to the two debates, one from the Greens and one from Labor. It must terrify the primary industry when they think of that combination and the terrible damage that that would do to the very basis of the New Zealand economy. When we look at the SOP in the cold light of the facts that present themselves, we do see that it clearly is the Labor government trying to dig itself out of a position that they've placed themselves in, and setting the limit, or the cap as was spoken of by the previous speaker, at 23%, just goes to show you how ineffective it would be, in the sense that it's the intention under the constitutional vote at the next AGM to actually limit it well and truly under that. So it's of more platitude to try and get back into the situation and be able to see the positives that this particular bill presents. It's very interesting just to also consider, Mr Chair, that in setting up TAFE, and there's been a lot of talk about setting it up, there's no guarantee that it is actually going to meet the expectations and aspirations. And as any good government would do, there is also a very appropriate means by way of taking action that will ensure that the value that Fonterra represents to the New Zealand economy and to the farmers that are involved in the industry is retained. And when we go to the bill, we see there in section 1, subclause 109A, right through to the end of 109L, is a very prescribed process, Mr Chair, that requires communication but from Fonterra to clearly identify and provide the evidence that would be necessary to tell the Minister that, in actual fact, an alternative program needs to be put in place, which would be a program whereby a fair value share would be established. So whilst everybody is going on about trading amongst farmers, there in this bill is a framework that, if in fact it doesn't address the redemption risk that Fonterra is exposed to, then there is a mechanism whereby the fair value of the share is established. And that's something that needs to be really looked at and concentrated on, because whilst the organisation of Fonterra is trying to maximise returns back to farmers, there is no silver bullet around a lot of these things. The government has tested the thinking of Fonterra, and it needs to have that rescue net beneath it in the event of trading amongst farmers, not actually attracting the interest of outside purchasers of the economic value of those shares. So, Mr Chair, this is a very good bill. It does worry me when we hear the talk of caps, because at 23% cap, it sounds all very nice and wonderful, but what I've heard from the other side of the House is that they want to cap the number of dairy farmers in this country. And that has been a public comment that has come out, and it just sort of starts to really paint the opposition in the true light that it is, that they are dislikers and haters of the primary sector, and when they look at any opportunity, they'll do their utmost to actually rape out of the primary sector revenues for other use. And they don't think about looking for efficiencies and providing opportunity for economic growth. They look at ways to gain money out of the primary industry to squander in other reckless ideas. So, Mr Speaker, it was an absolute pleasure to work along with the committee on this particular bill. And Mr Chair,
call the Honourable Member Colin
Mr Chair, thank you, Mr Chair. I would have to say that a lot of the concentration was also put around just how we would arrive at that dairy milk price, because that actually, the bill itself opened ourselves up to a whole lot of dialogue that came in and raised questions about contestability, and that draws my attention to the member's bill under the name of Turo Flavel. And we are quite confident under the Select Committee that we have set the scene at a very high but contestable level. We recognise that there will be major interests within the dairy sector of new entrants, and in thus doing, we were very conscious as a committee not to buy into some of the information that was used as a base study for setting the price, for the farm gate price. When you actually looked at Deloitte's research into it, it was quite aged, and it also had some inconsistencies around the product values that were put into the farm gate milk price. Very, very conscious that there will be significant Māori interest in the dairy industry. Māori today represent 10% of the primary industry, and on that basis we considered it quite fully, and we took very good advice. But however, we appreciate the thought of the member putting that bill forward. So, Mr Chair, I'm very pleased to see that in this bill, Part 1, that it addresses the fundamental framework of TAFE, should it fly, and I wish Fonterra all the very, very best. If it does not actually work out and cover off the redemption risk as they are hoping, then I'm confident that what is considered in the Section 109 right through that section, it will address the fair value share price. Thank you very much.
Mr Chairman.
I call the Honourable Member Richard Prosser.
Pleased to take a call on this committee stage of the dairy